They thought they could lie. They thought they could manipulate you, hide behind their masks, and feed you illusions while keeping the truth buried under layers of silence. But they underestimated something critical: your intuition, your inner knowing, your divine connection. You were watching the whole time, quietly, silently, observing. You didn't need to shout. You didn't need to expose them right away. You simply waited because you knew who was being genuine and who was playing a role. You saw the signs. You felt the shifts. While they smiled in your face and whispered in the shadows, you were already decoding every action, every energy, every subtle betrayal. There's something deeply sacred about someone who doesn't react, but still sees everything. That's what shook them. They expected you to fold. They expected you to fall for the illusion, but instead you stayed grounded. You stayed silent and accurate. Now they're speechless, because everything you predicted, everything you warned about in quiet tones or felt deep in your bones, it's happening. One by one, the masks are falling. One by one, the truths are surfacing. And now, they're blown away by your accuracy. That calm, confident knowing that was never based on ego, but on divine alignment. That's what makes you different. That's what makes you dangerous to their deception. If you're watching this right now, it's not by accident. The timing of this message is confirmation that your intuition was never wrong. Watch this video all the way to the end, because something in this message is going to reignite your soul. And if this speaks to your spirit in any way, pause for a moment and send your energy to the universe. Write your most heartfelt wish in the comments below, followed by 777 to claim the energy that's circling you now. Subscribe to this channel and stay with this community. You're not alone. You're not crazy. You're gifted. And the truth you carry is weight. Let's send that energy out together. The fulfillment is closer than you think. They thought you didn't see. They mistook your kindness for blindness. But you were never blind. You were being graceful. You were watching them self-destruct in slow motion, praying silently for them to change. But your spirit was never meant to be played with. You were never the fool they just assumed you were, because you weren't screaming your truth. You let them show you who they really were. You didn't interrupt their performances. You didn't stop them from digging their own graves. And that's what terrifies them now. Because as the truth unfolds and as their shadows start leaking into the light, they realize you were never lost. You were always 10 steps ahead. And now that they know you knew all along, they're scrambling. They're nervous. They're asking themselves, how did they know? When did they figure it out? Why didn't they say anything? But you don't operate on the same frequency as them. While they were plotting, you were praying. While they were hiding secrets, you were sharpening your discernment. And now that everything is unfolding just as you sense, they can't even look you in the eye, because truth has power. And your truth, it's undeniable. But don't think this is just about them. This was a test for you to see if you trust your inner, knowing even when the outside looked convincing. To see if you'd stay aligned even when the pressure tried to distort you. And you passed. You didn't betray your intuition. You didn't second-guess your discernment. You chose truth, even when it meant walking alone. You chose alignment, even when it meant letting go of people you once loved. That's the mark of someone chosen. Someone divinely protected. Someone who doesn't need to expose others because the truth always finds a way to reveal itself. Your silence was your strength. Your stillness was your strategy. And now, everything hidden is being exposed. That's why they're shocked. Because they never imagined you were capable of such accuracy. But it was never about guessing. It was about listening. Listening to your spirit. Listening to God. And now, the same people who doubted you, mocked you, or talked behind your back, they're being confronted with a truth they can't deny. Your presence is echoing louder than their words ever could. You see, the chosen ones don't chase, they attract. They don't force, they align. And what you've been aligning with is starting to manifest. The truth you held inside is becoming visible. The things you sensed are now realities. And the ones who thought they could deceive you are left in disbelief. That's divine justice. That's what happens when you trust your knowing even in the dark. Now that your knowing has become visible truth, you're witnessing a shift not only around you, But within you, there's a peace settling in your soul, not because things got easier, but because the illusion finally broke. You're no longer walking through life wondering if your instincts were right. You're walking with certainty. And that certainty is powerful. Because once you realize how accurate your discernment was, you stop explaining yourself to people who never valued your voice in the first place. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You stop overthinking every step. You just move with purpose, with clarity, with quiet, unstoppable authority. That's what they didn't anticipate. They thought if they could gaslight you long enough, you'd eventually forget the truth, that you'd doubt yourself, that you'd give in, but you didn't. You held the line. You sat in silence while chaos swirled around you. And now, they're sitting in the very confusion they tried to put you in. That's divine reversal. And it's not about revenge. It's about realignment. The universe doesn't let truth remain buried forever. And you, chosen one, are living proof of that. Your presence now feels different. Heavier, more sacred, because people can feel it. You know more than you say. You carry wisdom that can't be learned from books. You carry vision that's not of this world. That's why some people fear you, without ever truly knowing you, because your light exposes their shadows. Your presence makes their masks uncomfortable. You don't even have to speak. It's your energy that reads a room, clears a fog, and makes deception impossible to sustain. But even as your accuracy shocks them, remember this. Not everyone will celebrate your clarity. Some will envy it. Some will reject it. Some will try to dim it, because they don't understand the cost of such perception. They don't know the sleepless nights, the isolated seasons, the internal battles you endured just to keep your spirit clean. They don't realize that your accuracy came from pain, from betrayal, from being broken enough to develop spiritual radar. You earned this knowing, and now you wear it like invisible armor. Don't apologize for it. Don't minimize your insight to protect the fragile egos of people who once lied to your face. Your gift was never meant to make others comfortable. It was meant to make you unshakable. And now that the truth is rising, the same people who once told you you're overthinking or you're being too sensitive are realizing you were right all along. Not because you said it loud, but because life is now echoing your intuition word for word. Let them feel it. Let them sit with the weight of your truth. This isn't about gloating or getting even. It's about validation. It's about standing in your knowing and no longer shrinking from it. You don't need to prove anything. The outcomes are speaking for you. The alignment you've stepped into is louder than any argument. And those who once dismissed you now wish they had listened. But even now, be careful, because some will try to come back, not because they've changed, but because your accuracy makes them want access again. They're drawn to your light, to your vision, to the way you see what others miss. But this is your moment to set new boundaries, to protect the clarity you've earned. You're not the same person who tolerated half-truths and silent betrayals. You've evolved, and your discernment has sharpened to a point where anything less than truth feels like poison in your soul. So guard it. Guard your peace, your energy, your knowing, not out of fear, but out of reverence. Because you are no longer someone waiting for truth. You are someone who walks in it. And that walk, it changes everything. It separates you. It elevates you. It calls you into rooms that can only be accessed by those with clean hearts and sharp spirits. You're not here to impress. You're here to be a mirror, to reflect truth, to expose lies, and to remind the world that there are still souls who see with heaven's eyes. The beauty of all this? You never had to expose them. You never had to retaliate. The universe, in its divine timing, did all the revealing for you. And now you're standing in the aftermath, clear-eyed, steady, and untouchable. They're shocked not only that you knew, but that you stayed quiet. That you didn't need to scream to be right. That you didn't need revenge to be free. You just stood tall, loved deeply, listened closely, and moved with grace. What unsettles them the most is not just that you knew, it's that you never flinched. You didn't confront them with rage. You didn't expose their secrets in retaliation. You simply withdrew, quietly, elegantly. You let distance do the talking. You let silence become your boundary. And that silence was louder than any confrontation ever could have been. It echoed. It made them wonder. It made them panic. Because when someone who knows the truth chooses not to argue, that's when you realize they have nothing left to prove and nothing left to tolerate. They expected a reaction. They fed on chaos. They wanted drama, not closure. But instead, you gave them indifference wrapped in dignity. That's what they couldn't process. Because people who operate through manipulation often rely on confusion to maintain control. But you didn't give them that power. You didn't entertain their game. You stepped back, rebuilt your peace, and let time confirm everything you sensed from the beginning. Now, they're stunned, not just by what you saw, but by how you carried it. See, being chosen doesn't mean you're always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it means being the one who walks away first. Sometimes it means leaving without burning bridges, not because you want to return, but because you don't need to destroy what's already crumbling. You knew what was behind the mask. You recognized the patterns, and you honored your spirit enough to detach before it broke you. Now they're feeling the absence, not just of your presence, but of your patience, of your love, of your energy, because that's what you really gave them. Energy, a safe space, a chance to be honest, to grow, to be seen. But they didn't respect it. They mistook it for naivety. They assumed you'd always be available, always forgiving, always blind to the parts of them they were too afraid to fix. But you saw it all. You just gave them grace until they gave you no choice but to release them. And when you finally did, it wasn't bitter. It was necessary. Your soul had outgrown the deception. Your intuition had become too loud to ignore. And in that moment, you transformed. You moved from hoping they'd change to accepting they wouldn't. From holding on to letting go. And that shift, it changed everything. Because when a chosen one chooses themselves, the energy field around them becomes impenetrable. It becomes sacred. And those who once had access start to feel the walls of that protection and the coldness of being outside it. Now they look at you with eyes wide open, not in admiration, but in disbelief, because you're no longer who you were when they betrayed you. You've evolved. Your presence has weight. Your energy is refined. And the most powerful part? You never needed to prove it. They're witnessing the results, the elevation, the clarity, the inner peace that radiates from someone who's been to the fire and came out glowing instead of burned. Don't think they don't notice. They do. Every move you make now is magnified. Every word you speak holds power because they remember the version of you that doubted yourself, that loved them through lies, that waited for apologies that never came. And now that you stop waiting, now that you become everything they said you'd never be, it terrifies them because your growth reveals their stagnation. Your confidence exposes their insecurity. Your clarity unmasks their confusion. And still, you don't need revenge. That's the most divine part of it all. You don't need them to hurt like you did. You don't need them to collapse for closure because you already found yours within yourself, in the quiet healing, in the tears they never saw, in the prayers they never heard, in the moments when you chose your peace over your pride. That's where your power was born, not in proving them wrong, but in proving to yourself that you could rise without them. So let them watch. Let them sit in the discomfort of your evolution, not to punish them, but to show them what happens when a soul chooses truth over illusion, when a spirit refuses to be broken by betrayal, when a heart heals without bitterness. That's what makes you rare. That's what makes you divine. And that's what makes your presence unforgettable. They're shocked you knew the whole time. But what's even more shocking is how you never lost yourself in the knowing. What they didn't realize is that while they were trying to manipulate the narrative, you were rewriting your own. They were busy curating illusions, saying just enough to seem innocent, withholding just enough to remain in control. But you were peeling back the layers, not just in them, but in yourself. Because the truth is, knowing what they were doing wasn't even the hardest part. The hardest part was pretending you didn't, smiling through the pain, carrying the weight of what you knew while trying not to let it harden your heart. That's a burden only the chosen carry, the weight of unspoken wisdom. Every encounter, every word they slipped carelessly, every contradiction They thought you missed. You noticed it all. You kept the receipts in your spirit. You didn't need screenshots or dramatic exposure. You had spiritual evidence. That deep, visceral sense that something wasn't right, that something wasn't matching. And they mistook your silence for ignorance. But now, as their world shakes, and as the very lies they told begin to fold in on themselves, you stand as a pillar of truth. What they never counted on was your resilience. Because knowing the truth doesn't always bring peace right away. Sometimes it brings pain. Sometimes it breaks your heart to see how far people will go to protect their image instead of their integrity. But even in your heartbreak, you remained aligned. You didn't let it destroy your faith in humanity. You didn't let it pull you out of character. You let it shape you, sharpen you, strengthen your discernment. And now, when people look at you, they can't quite explain it, but they feel it. A depth, a wisdom, a presence that sees beyond words. They feel like you're reading them before they speak. That's because you are. You're no longer reacting to behavior. You're responding to energy. You don't just hear what people say. You feel what they hide. And that is what makes you powerful. Not loud power, not aggressive power, but the kind of power that makes deception evaporate in your presence. You become a spiritual mirror. People see themselves when they're around you. The real self, not the curated self. And for those who are living honestly, it feels refreshing. But for those who are hiding behind facades, it's terrifying because your presence reveals their truth, even if you never speak a word. That's why they distance themselves. That's why they talk about you in rooms you're not in, because they're uncomfortable with how much you see, with how much you understand, without being told. But don't let that discourage you. Don't let the projections shrink your knowing. You were given this vision for a reason, not to carry the burden of others' deception, but to protect your path, to discern who belongs and who doesn't, to walk with confidence even when you're walking alone. And you've done that. You've trusted the whispers of your spirit when the noise around you was trying to drown them out. You honor what you felt, even when it didn't make logical sense. That's courage. That's faith. And now you're being elevated. Quietly but undeniably, not just in material ways, but in spiritual depth, in emotional clarity, in self-awareness. Your circle may be smaller, but your peace is greater. Your path may be quieter, but it's straighter. You've learned to release what doesn't align, even when it hurts. And because of that, you're making room for divine replacements, for realness, for truth, for people who speak your language, not just with words, but with energy. Let them be shocked. Let them whisper. Let them wrestle with the reality that you knew all along, that you saw through the act, that you felt the shift, because their shock is not your concern. Your only responsibility is to stay true to what you know, to honor your discernment, to protect your peace, and to keep walking, lightly, boldly, silently, knowing that everything that left was never meant to carry your truth anyway. You are not just someone who sees. You are someone who remembers, who holds spiritual archives of moments no one else noticed. You walk through life with the kind of awareness that makes the atmosphere shift. You don't chase closure, you create it. You don't seek revenge. You rise beyond the reach of those who wronged you. And that elevation, that inner radiance, it's your reward. It's a return for every time you stayed silent while your spirit screamed. For every time you chose grace over revenge. For every time you stood in your truth, even when no one stood with you. The ones who try to deceive you are now beginning to understand the depth of your knowing. They're realizing that you weren't just guessing. You were guided. You weren't paranoid. You were spiritually aware. And what they mistook for emotional sensitivity was actually a higher level perception they couldn't comprehend. They played games rooted in ego while you navigated life through intuition. That's why they lost a game they didn't even know you were never playing. What's haunting them now is the memory of your calmness, the moments you should have exploded, but didn't, the times they expected retaliation, but were met with peace. That stillness, it wasn't weakness. It was divine wisdom. You knew that if you stepped outside your character just to match their chaos, you lose the clarity that set you apart. So you remained rooted, even when everything around you was shaking. That restraint is now your power. and they feel it. They're starting to replay the conversations, the moments, the energy they once dismissed, every lie told in front of you, every truth half spoken, every glance that tried to cover guilt. They remember it now, vividly, because now they realize you weren't silent because you didn't know. You were silent because you didn't need their confession to validate what your soul already confirmed. That's the kind of knowing that unsettles the soul, the kind that haunts those who once underestimated you. And maybe the most powerful part, you never try to make them see it. You never chase them down with your truth. You didn't force them to understand, because you knew that true understanding can't be forced. It must be revealed. And now that it's all unfolding before them, now that the dots are connecting in hindsight, they're coming to terms with something they never considered. You were right. And not just right, you were precise. You read the energy of the situation, like it was printed on a page. But even as this revelation settles in their hearts, your journey has moved forward, because you didn't stay stuck in the pain of the past. You used that pain as fuel. You turned the betrayal into wisdom. You transformed silence into strategy. You didn't just survive, you refined. You didn't just heal, you evolved. And now, your energy no longer matches a version of you they once thought they could manipulate. That's why they can't come back. Not really. Even if they try. Even if they apologize. Even if they say all the right words. Because a version of you they remember no longer exists. You've transcended that chapter. You've rewritten your frequency. And those who are comfortable in your confusion can't function in your clarity. That's the cost of spiritual growth. Outgrowing everything that once tolerated your uncertainty. You no longer crave their validation. You no longer seek to explain yourself. You've seen what happens when you trust your knowing, even when no one else does. And that trust has become your compass. You move differently now. You listen differently. You see through things in seconds that used to take you months. Because you're no longer doubting what you feel, you're honoring it. And that shift has opened doors nothing else could. Your discernment isn't just a gift, it's a lifeline. It's how you stay ahead. It's how you avoid cycles that used to drain you. It's how you walk away without guilt. And that kind of clarity changes everything. Because now, every space you enter with purpose. Every relationship you choose with intention. Every yes is sacred. Every no is powerful. You're no longer living on autopilot. You're living in alignment. So yes, they're shocked. Shocked that you knew. Shocked that you never broke. Shocked that you're now living a life they never thought you'd reach. But none of this was by accident. It was all written. Every delay, every disappointment, every moment of confusion. It was all a divine setup to activate what was already inside you, to pull out the power that only pressure could reveal. And now, you walk in a new authority, one that doesn't demand respect. It naturally commands it, one that doesn't speak to be heard, but to be felt. You're no longer trying to be understood by those who chose to misunderstand you. You've made peace with being the one who sees too much, feels too deeply, and walks too differently. Because that's your design. That's your anointing. That's why you're chosen. It's strange, isn't it? How everything they tried to hide from you ended up being the very thing that revealed who they really were. They thought they were being clever, covering their tracks, controlling the narrative, switching roles to make you question yourself. But they forgot that when someone walks with divine clarity, nothing stays hidden for long. The truth has a frequency. It hums. It vibrates through the cracks. And when you're chosen, you feel that vibration even when the words don't match the energy. That's the power you've always carried. Your ability to sense what others try to suppress. What they don't understand is that this didn't just make you wiser, it made you quieter. Not because you were afraid, but because you learned the value of peace. You learned that not every truth needs to be shouted. That not every betrayal deserves a confrontation. That sometimes the most powerful move is walking away with your knowing intact. You could have exposed them. You could have burned bridges, but you didn't. You chose yourself instead. And in doing so, you ignited a chain reaction they never saw coming. Because here's the thing, your silence forced them to sit with themselves, to look in the mirror without your energy there to soften their reflection. They had no one left to blame, no one left to gaslight. And in that void, the truth started to haunt them. Not just the truth about what they did, but the truth about who they are without your light. That's the part that stings the most. Realizing that the calm, the clarity, the emotional safety they took for granted wasn't something they created. It was something you brought. You were the stability. You were the peace. You were the one reading between the lines, giving them chances to be real, even when their actions screamed otherwise. And now that you're gone, there's an emptiness, a silence that doesn't feel safe. It feels loud, because when someone's presence carried divine light, their absence reveals every shadow left behind. That's what they feel now, that cold space where your warmth used to be. And yet, you're not bitter. That's what confuses them the most. You're not out seeking revenge. You're not dragging their names through the mud. You're not begging for closure. You simply moved on. And that kind of peace, that kind of maturity, that's more terrifying than any confrontation. Because it means you no longer need anything from them. Not the apology, not the explanation, not the validation. You reclaimed your power. And that kind of spiritual independence leaves them unsettled. But this isn't just about what you've left behind. This is about what you're walking into. Because now that the fog is cleared, now that your discernment is sharpened, you're attracting differently. You're vibrating higher. You're entering rooms with people who speak your language, not just with words, but with energy. People who don't make you explain your intuition. People who value what you sense, not mock it. People who see your insight as sacred, not inconvenient. You're entering a season where your knowing isn't a burden. It's a gift. Where your past isn't a wound, it's wisdom. Where your silence isn't misunderstood, it's respected. This is what divine redirection looks like. Not always loud, not always dramatic. Sometimes it's just you, walking away quietly, only to find that everything you truly needed was waiting for you in the stillness ahead. And now your story is shifting. You're no longer the one carrying the pain. You're the one carrying the blueprint of what it looks like to move through betrayal without becoming bitter, to see clearly without being cruel, to choose truth without needing to destroy others in the process. That's why your presence holds weight now. That's why your name carries energy. Because you've lived through what most people wouldn't survive, and you've done it with grace. They see it now. They feel it now. And no matter how much they try to act unaffected, deep down they know you were right. You were real. You were rare. And they lost something they'll never find again. Not because you were perfect, but because you were present in a way few people are. You were honest when it was easier to lie. Loyal when it was easier to leave. Patient when it was easier to punish. And they took that for granted. But now they're just watching you rise, watching you evolve, watching you become untouchable, not because you're hiding, but because you're glowing in a frequency they can't reach anymore. The most powerful part of your journey is not that you knew the truth. It's that you didn't let it make you bitter. You didn't let it harden your heart. You didn't let their deception become your identity. Instead, you turned it all into wisdom. You transmuted pain into purpose, betrayal into vision, silence into clarity. And now, you walk through life with a calm that can't be faked and a strength that doesn't need to shout. That's what truly shakes them. Because you're not who you were before. You're not the person they could confuse or control. You're not emotionally accessible to the same manipulation. You've seen too much. You felt too deeply. You've learned the cost of ignoring your inner voice. So now you listen differently. You observe longer. You protect your peace with sacred intention. And in doing so, you become the one who can no longer be played. They can feel it. That wall of quiet discernment. That distance that doesn't beg for explanation. That presence that scans a soul without speaking. And they don't know how to navigate you anymore because their old tricks don't work. Their vague apologies fall flat. Their charm feels empty. Their excuses echo in the silence you've mastered. They use to manipulate the emotional version of you. But this new version, this healed version, is spiritually immune. You become a mirror they didn't ask for. One that reflects back everything they tried to suppress. And mirrors don't lie. That's why they avoid you now. Not because you've changed, but because they can't hide from themselves in your presence anymore. They can't pretend. They can't twist the narrative. Because your energy remembers. Your spirit recalls every vibration they sent, even the ones that try to mask as kindness.